Here now, Herb London, president of the London Centre for Policy Research. Tell me the truth now. You never, ever thought that that man on the golden escalator would become the president of the United States?
I did not think so at that time. However, it became clear.
How long did it take you?
Well, it took me a couple of months. Actually, I was traveling through Pennsylvania, and I started to count the signs for Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. And there were 376 signs in the middle of Pennsylvania. And I realized this was a 40-point swing, 20 electoral votes in Pennsylvania that are normally Democratic votes going to the Republican side. A 40-point swing. At that point, I said, Donald Trump is going to upset everyone.
Real fast, give me 20 seconds on whether or not you think he has been a successful president 6 months in, or 3 or 5 months.
I think reasonably successful. I'd say a B, B+. Okay. There's no question that the president has engaged in major changes. It's also true he's got major challenges ahead.
I think Herb just invented the lawn sign indicator.
Well, last night, the congressional baseball team, the two sides, they played for the first time since the shooting. Republicans and Democrats made a big show of unity. They huddled together, as you can see, to pray before the game. So, Herb, there's a good show of unity last night, and obviously very welcome. Do you think it lasts?
I do not think it lasts, in part because what's happened in this country is that partisanship has changed very dramatically. There was a time when you talked about the loyal opposition. You talked about adversaries. You talked about political foes. Now you talk about enemies. Enemies have to be destroyed. They're not merely defeated, they're destroyed. And so we have a very different culture that has emerged in American life. The unrelenting attacks on Donald Trump are designed in large part to delegitimize this presidency. So we're seeing a left that has a very, very different view of America from the left in the past.
Do you think, I think it was violent rhetoric from the left, things like Shakespeare in the Park, the severed head, that kind of thing. I think that has something to do with the violence that we've seen. Am I going too far?
No, I don't think you're going too far. However, I think it's very difficult to make any general judgments because there are a lot of loonies out there. They could just as easily attack a Democrat or a Republican. The problem, however, is that the general atmosphere for political diatribes and discussion has changed, and it's changed in part for the reasons that you've cited. We are now in an area of increasing violence in the rhetoric that's employed.
Herb London, you got any thoughts on this? I asked a general question. Look, more guns make us safer, less guns make us safer. Which side are you on?
Well, it's a question of who has the guns. I mean, a gun in the hands of St. Francis is not a weapon. A gun in the hands of a 17-year-old hooligan is a weapon. So it's a question of who has the guns. If you're talking about the idea of having liberal gun control laws, as you do in Florida and Texas, they have reduced the crime rate very significantly. So I think that it is, the police chief is quite right in suggesting it's a mixed bag.
Yes, it is.
There's no question. It is a question of looking at the statistical analysis to arrive at any judgment.
I'm worried about the prevalence of guns, but at the same time, I'm worried about if my right to defend myself and my family and my home is taken away from me. That I don't want. That's not America.
Right. Well, so I think that you look at... You want to look at those who are mentally ill and have access to guns. That's a problem. There's no question about that.
Well, Herb London is with us, and he's observing, sitting next to him, the pumped-up John Lonsky. Do you think this is as big a deal for inflation and for real estate prices and for the grocery industry?
I think it is. I think that the deflationary impulse is really quite significant. And John, I think, has made the case quite well, whether, in fact, he's on decaffeinated coffee or not. But the interesting thing about this is if you look at the Whole Foods, the prices in Whole Foods are rather high. And so you're talking about the convenience factor. It is not only the price factor that will be the competitive environment. It is also the very fact that now you will have your salmon delivered to you by a drone at Amazon. So you want your meal, you're going to call up, and that meal will be delivered in minutes. That, I think, changes the character of the way in which food is distributed in the United States.
Very true, very true.
Well, I think that John has stated it very effectively. There's no question that the integrity of the system is very much at stake. I think the American people have lost confidence in the electoral process. And one of the things that can be restored is the commission that Vice President Pence is presently heading.
Now, Herb, Alex there was a little cynical about the letter from Charles Schumer to the leaders of the Republicans in the Senate about health care reform. I'm not. I think this is progress.
Well, I think it's progress as well. I mean, look, it's very unlikely that Schumer is going to be cooperative. However, if you're going to have the meeting, there has to be something to discuss. Are they discussing pre-existing cases? Are they discussing the new fund for those people who have a pre-existing condition? There are issues that can be, I think, laid out very nicely in a meeting. And it's very well true, may very well be true, that the moderate Republicans and the Democrats have an awful lot in common. If that is the case, you get to the 51 votes. That's what you need. And I think I am encouraged.
51 votes.
I am encouraged.
Or not. Yes, I'm with you on this one. Thanks, sir. Here's the big story of the day. We've been following it all morning. Amazon is going to buy Whole Foods. They're paying $13.7 billion, all cash. Amazon straight up, and so is Whole Foods. However, the theory is that Amazon's trying to dominate grocery, so the grocery competitors like SuperValu, Kroger, Target, for example, not to mention Walmart and Costco, they're all way, way down. And so are the food makers, Kellogg, General Mills, Kraft Heinz, that is, Mondelez, all of them straight down because they've got to compete on price and compete with Amazon Whole Foods. Big story, Herb London.
I think it's a great story. It's a very interesting story. It's a technological story in addition to being an economic story. And what you're going to see is this competition across the board, which I think is very desirable from the consumer's point of view.
Amazon is the ultimate company of the last decade.
That's right.
They're into everything and win constantly.
Well, they win constantly, but of course, if you are in the business of looking at markets, people who are winning constantly at some point lose. Yeah. And so, there will be competition. That's the remarkable thing about the free market.
Who would have thought? You and I are the somewhat similar generation, I suspect. We're the same vintage. I think we are. Back in our day, you took your bag to the store, you bought your groceries, and you drove home. You put them in the trunk and you drove home. That's what you did.
Well, as I indicated to you before, imagine you call up and you say, I'd like to have my salmon, my Brussels sprouts, my mashed potatoes. Please deliver. Drone delivers it right to your door.
Right.
I mean, there's no preparation in the kitchen any longer.
That's new, isn't it?
It's absolutely
Sure
new.
is.